From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ijoma Munyato.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, President Muhammadu Buhari to address joint session of the National Assembly on Thursday over current security challenges in the country. Again, the president warns against acts of hooliganism, hiding behind protests, commends military for sustaining Nigeria's peace and security. Planned EndSARS protests failed to hold in Lagos, Abuja and Port Harcourt as youths take peaceful demonstration to Osun State House of Assembly. And Ghanaians vote in presidential election as President Akufo-Addo faces rival Mahama in tight race. Plus, we'll have business, sports, and later international news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, federal government to distributes fertilizers to 5 million small-scale farmers at subsidized rates in efforts to boost food security across the country.
And on sports news tonight, host of the 20th National Sports Festival, Edo State disagrees with new dates released by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 for the event.
For the first time since he assumed leadership of the country, President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to address a joint session of the National Assembly on the security challenges confronting the country, particularly the Northeast. The president will address the lawmakers on Thursday, December the 10th, as he's expected to speak on the steps the federal government is taking to tackle insecurity in the country. The president's personal assistant on social media, Loretta Onoche, announced this on her social media handle today. The House of Representatives had on Tuesday invited the president to appear on the floor of the House to explain the rising spate of insecurity in the country. The decision follows a motion of urgent national importance moved by the Borno State Caucus of the House over the gruesome murder of farmers in the state. Earlier today, the lower house turned down the call for impeachment processes to commence against the president by one of its members. Honorable Kingsley Chinda, representing Obiakwa Federal Constituency in Rivers State, had called on Nigerians, irrespective of political party, tribe or religion, to compel their representatives to commence impeachment processes against President Muhammadu Buhari. President Muhammadu Buhari says Nigerians have the right to a peaceful protest, but the protest should be done within the laws of the land. The president gave the clarification at the virtual opening of the Chief of Army Staff Annual Conference 2020 and commissioning of the Nigerian Army Cyber Warfare Command building in Abuja, the nation's capital. The president commends the army for its doggedness in curbing the activities of insurgents in the country.
Officers and men of the Nigerian Army, as well as government officials, are gathered for the annual Chief of Staff Conference and commissioning of some projects initiated by the Chief of Army Staff. The purpose of the conference is to appraise the performance of the Army yearly and projects for next year. The president, who joined the conference virtually, says a peaceful protest was allowed in the country, but gave a stern warning to those who want to create havoc.
I also wish to state that any act of hooliganism behind lawful and peaceful protests will be dealt with decisively to ensure the peace and stability of our nation.
The president commends the army for being resolute in the discharge of their duties.
Let me also use this opportunity to commend the army for its unwavering commitment towards curtailing the activities of insurgents armed bandits, kidnappers, cattle rustlers, and other violent criminals.
The Minister of Defense also shares the President's thoughts.
The armed forces of Nigeria and the Nigerian Army in particular have been in the forefront of efforts to restore peace in the country. In this regard, I commend the efforts of the Nigerian Army in the Northeast, which have led to a gradual return of internally displaced persons to their communities in furtherance of the settlement plans of the Borno State government.
The Nigerian Army lists its achievements for the year 2020, despite the enormous challenges it encountered.
Within the period under review, the Nigerian Army embarked on massive infrastructural development, undertook further force restructuring, conducted several local and overseas training, carried out various operations, as well as optimized logistics and its support elements, amongst others.
The commissioning of the Nigerian Cyber War Space Command is poised to be a leading player in the cyberspace worldwide, as it can monitor field operations of its personnel from anywhere.
And exercising their rights to protest, some youths in Osun State took to the streets as they made good their plan to resume the NSAS protests today. They marched through major streets of Osogbo and gathered at the State House of Assembly, where they made their demands. But the protests could not hold in Lagos, Abuja and Abeokuta, as there were preemptive measures taken by security agencies. Our correspondent Daredu reports.
Some youths in Osogbo, the Osun State capital, made good their plan to resume the NSAS protests today.
How many minutes did they use to speak about the falling?
A few numbers of protesters marched to the State House of Assembly, demanding to meet with the leadership of the lawmaking arm of government.
What they form in Osun State, to me, is not judicial panel of inquiry. It's just a political panel of inquiries. The second one, they said we will have town hall meeting with the governor. But the town hall meeting was political party. It's not a meeting, it was a party. Because the town hall meeting whereby they did not allow any of the NSAS movement to come in.
Meanwhile, the police in Ogun State seem poised to avoid being taken unawares as they hit the streets of the state capital, Abeokuta, to ensure that there's no breakdown of law and order in the state. Police and other security operators stayed on alert at strategic locations at the state capital to stop the protest.
I believe that those who are planning this protest, they are nothing but unscrupulous element who always derive pleasure in a troubled environment. And we have let them know that the command will not tolerate any form of protest for now.
And in Lagos, the epicenter of the NSAS protest, security operatives are stationed at Lekki Plaza to forestall the resumption of demonstration at the scene. The youth had used the open ground at the Lekki toll gate as one of the protest points in Lagos for about 2 weeks until October the 20th, when soldiers invaded the area and shot at protesters.
Organization is today.
The National Association of the Nigerian Students is asking its members to stay away from any fresh protest.
Any protest that is faceless, National Association of Nigerian Students, under my watch, will not be part to it.
The association also appealed to the Academic Staff Union of Universities to resolve their differences with the federal government in order to end the industrial action that is keeping Nigerian students at home.
The governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, is making it clear that he will not politicize issues of security based on ethnic, religious or party sentiments if the country must move forward. Some visiting northern elders, led by Professor Ango Abdullahi, were at the Government House in Port Harcourt. Governor Wike maintains that he'll continue to do his best to create a safe haven for any persons resident in the state. Our correspondent Jeffrey Ozongo reports.
It's a long journey from the north to southern Nigeria for members of the Northern Elders Forum led by its chairman, Professor Ango Abdullahi, former Speaker of the House of Representatives Gali Umar Nahaba, elder statesman Junaid Mohammed, the forum spokesman Akim Baba Ahmed, among others, who are visiting with Governor Nyesom Wike in Government House, Port Harcourt. Professor Abdullahi, who says they are visiting the southern part of the country following the loss of lives and destruction of assets of their kinsmen in the wake of the NSAS protest, commended Governor Wike for demonstrating leadership in protecting people from other parts of the country and creating a home away from home for northerners residents in the state.
Your Excellency, the story here is that we came and we met northerners who are living in your state. And the story they told us is that if this story can be repeated, or could be the same story that we can find everywhere else in this country, they will not be having the kind of problems that we're having today.
For Governor Wike, the primary objective of government is to protect lives and property devoid of ethno-religious sentiment. He added that everyone has a right to live in River State and promised to be fair to all.
It is not by our choice that you will say this is where you will come from. But if the Father God has also made it possible for us to be part of one country, it means that where you come from shouldn't be a factor in order to move this country forward.
The conversation from this meeting is indicative of the fact that a seeming division across the country could be rectified if all hands are on deck in moving the Nigerian project forward, beginning with the right leadership and the political will to get the right things done. From Port Harcourt, Jeffrey Ozongo, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Northern Socio-Political Group, the Araba Consultative Forum, believes that economic empowerment will solve the insecurity challenge in the north. The chairman of the forum and former Minister of Agriculture, Adwogbe, explains that the entire northern region has been affected by insecurity, and one of the ways to solve this challenge is to keep the youths busy. The former minister was speaking when he visited the Borno State Governor alongside the Chairman, Board of Trustees, Shehu Malami, and other members of the forum to commiserate with him on the recent killing of farmers in the state.
We have to regrow Borno State. We have to regrow the North. We have to regrow Nigeria. Because you have wealth here, plenty of it. We have wealth in the North. We occupy 78% of Nigeria's land mass, the area called Northern Nigeria. People mistakenly think that when you say North, it's Hausa Fulani only. In Borno alone, you have at least 12 ethnic groups. And so it is or more. So it is across. So when we tell people the ACF is not an ethnic organization, it's a regional organization of many ethnic groups, people don't want to understand. We have Christians, we have Muslims. But the time has come when we must industrialize, increase agricultural production. We must get richer and freer.
Meanwhile, Governor Babagana Zulum, on his part, told the guests that despite the recent happenings, the security situation in the northeast is better under the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari.
Despite the recent happenings in Borno State, the security situation in Borno State and indeed that of the entire northeast region is still far better under this administration than before. Before then, the insurgents were so hot to attack and take over even pure military facilities like the army barracks in Mongono, Bama, Kiwa barracks, And the multinational force headquarters at Baghdad, to mention a few. We can remember that even in a day, in one town, no fewer than over 500 people were killed in Burma. There were almost cases of daily attacks and bomb blasts at various ends of the metropolis before. I think Chief Audio can testify to what I say.
In part 2, after break, Edo Governorship Election Petition Tribunal begins sitting, entertains 4 out of 5 petitions challenging Governor Obaseki's victory. That's in a moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari addresses joint session of the National Assembly on Thursday over current security challenges in the country. Again, the president warns against acts of hooliganism, hiding behind protests, commends military for sustaining Nigeria's peace and security. Planned End SARS protests fail to hold in Lagos, Abuja and Port Harcourt as youths take peaceful demonstration to Osun State's House of Assembly. And Ghanaians vote in presidential election as President Akufo-Addo faces rival Mahama in tight race. Police authorities in Katsina State say they've rescued 13 persons abducted by bandits from Gatakawa village in Kankara local government area of the state. The Katsina State Police Command says stolen items are also recovered from the bandits, while a notorious fraudster who specializes in defrauding unsuspecting members of the public by posing as an Air Force officer was also arrested. Policemen are combing the village with a view to arresting fleeing bandits who sustained gunshot injuries during the gun battle. Away from security, hearing of the petitions in the Edo State 2020 governorship election begins today at the High Court in the state capital, Benin City. Now, 5 petitions filed against the victory of Governor Godwin Obaseki in the September the 29th governorship election were listed for today's session. The petitions were filed by the Action Democratic Party and its governorship candidates in the election, Emmanuel Boy, against INEC, the PDP, and its candidates, Godwin Obaseki, including the APC, and its candidate, Osage Izeyamu. Others include the Allied People's Movement against INEC, PDP, Governor Godwin Obaseki, and his deputy, Philip Shuaibu. Also, the governorship candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Agol Ebu Tracy, filed her case in her name against INEC, the PDP, and Governor Godwin Obaseki. And the Action People's Party versus Godwin Obaseki, the PDP and INEC, and the Action Alliance, and another versus Godwin Obaseki, the PDP, and INEC.
This is the first pre-hearing section, so those positions were taken. Particularly the last one now, there was an issue of competence, and the court has adjourned ruling till Friday. And in the first one too, there was also issue of competence. So of the 5 petitions that came today, 3 were challenged that they were not competent to be here at all. The court will deliver ruling on Friday. For the other 2, the motions for hearing, one is adjourned to tomorrow on the 8th, while one is adjourned to on the 9th. So this is called the pre-hearing section. We have not really gone into the petition. But during this section, some petition can just go. So if they didn't meet requirement, the court can strike them out. Then save the one that can be saved. Then we proceed to hearing. So and this is the procedure rightly taken today.
The National Emergency Management Agency has confirmed the death of 68 persons across 35 states as a result of the 2020 floods. The Director General of the agency, Mr. Mohammed, explains that the devastating impact of the flood is adversely affecting food security in the country. He acknowledged that the state emergency agencies increasingly encounter challenges such as low capacity and logistics, which inevitably slows response coordination. He was speaking at its review meeting in Abuja.
Affected 35 states, including FCT, 320 local government areas, and over 129,000 people. It led to loss of lives, destroyed houses, and washed away farmlands across the country, thereby having negative impact on food security in Nigeria. Before the 2020 flooding occurred, the whole world was experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic with lockdown and restriction protocol to contain the spread of the virus. After the release of the seasonal rainfall prediction by NIMET and the annual flood outlook by NISA, our worst fear was confirmed with the devastating flood disaster within the pandemic.
The federal government has launched a revised Universal Health Coverage Implementation Guideline for 2018 to 2022, insisting the universal health coverage target for the year 2030 is feasible. The Minister of Health, Osage Ohanire, says the new guideline will help to improve the country's healthcare indices and reduce maternal and infant mortality.
Doing this very difficult job of unveiling, and on behalf of federal government.
The Minister of Health, along with heads of agencies under the ministry, unveiled the revised Universal Health Care Fund implementation guidelines for the year 2018 to 2022. The new implementation guideline is a document that highlights government's roadmap to achieving universal health coverage for all citizens. The overall objective is to strengthen the country's health system, reduce out-of-pocket spending for health, and raise the country's healthcare indices.
Implementation of the third gateway will significantly reduce the incidence of about 30,000 women losing their lives to childbirth-related incidents per year, and 714,000 under 5 children lost yearly.
In the next 10 years, we'll be able to save 110 maternal lives. We'll be able to save 3.1 million children under 5 from dying. That is massive.
The federal government's health expenditure for 2019 to 2021 is projected to reach 1.478 billion naira. In 2019, the health expenditure stood at 1.191 billion naira. An estimated 70% of Nigerians do out-of-pocket payment for healthcare services. Some participants want the issue of health financing to be prioritized.
The provision of the National Health Act 2014, Section 2, subsection 2D, that requires the preparation and presentation of an annual report of the state of health of Nigeria and the national health system. The event today, to me, looks like the precursor to this report.
Starting from this year 2020 budget, the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund has now been moved into statutory transfer, in which case it is 100% release. It's not what we meant as at when we came in 2019. From 2020 budget up to now, it is now a statutory transfer in which whatever is allocated will be 100% released.
Besides financing, the Director General of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control speaks on the need to strengthen health systems at the state level.
We cannot have our states' health security at the state level run anymore by a single state epidemiologist and a single DSNO. We have to change that paradigm by putting together the health security infrastructure at the state level.
Healthcare is on the essential services list of the federal government. It is hoped that the new Universal Healthcare Implementation Guidelines will improve the country's healthcare indices.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Ghanaians vote in presidential election as President Akufo-Addo faces rival Mahama in tight race, and more from our London studio and around the world in 5. To join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The federal government today reconvened the meeting with the organised labour as they continue dialogue on the recent hike in the pump price of petrol and electricity tariff. They adjourned the meeting 2 weeks ago to enable the federal government have further consultations after Labour insisted on immediate reversal of the new price of petrol and electricity tariff. The Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, told the union leaders that a lot of work on issues of palliatives have been done by the federal government team, while the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, maintains that the interests of the country and its citizens continues to drive the discussions. On the part of the Labour leaders, the NLC President Ayuba Waba says he expects that progress will be made, especially on how to reach some of the milestones set during all previous meetings. The federal government wants to increase foreign investment in the nation's fledgling information technology industry. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, made this known while unveiling Nigeria's pavilion at the 2020 Gulf Information Technology Exhibition taking place in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. He explains that the event will provide Nigerian startups with the support to compete among the best technologies of the world.
It is the only face-to-face tech event to take place anywhere in the world this year, and it's uniting international technology visionaries, industry innovators, and global investors. Nigeria is joining 13 other countries at the 40th edition of the Gulf Information Technology Exhibition, taking place at the Dubai World Trade Center, United Arab Emirates.
I therefore commission.
The event provides Nigeria an opportunity to sell her vision of a digital economy, and the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy is leading that drive.
As we can see, this year's participation is all about to bring about cross-fertilization of innovation and ideas. We are not here to participate just to see what has been taking place, but rather to ensure that we get more investors that are willing to invest in Nigeria, and secondly, to get technology transfer, and thirdly, to do the best we can to have cross-fertilization of ideas and innovations.
The event brings together about 1,300 exhibitors, including over 300 startups from over 60 countries. There are pavilions from most innovative, technological and promising nations. 10 Nigerian startups are on display here.
We are working on the digital innovation and entrepreneurship policy, which will help us create the ecosystem, create the enabling environment, and provide the infrastructure for our startups. Likewise, we are doing a lot in terms of capacity building to build the capacity for our startups as well as our citizens to understand and embrace these new emerging technologies so that we can build the future we are creating.
This year, Nigeria is an official partner, and the National Information Technology Development Agency is spearheading Nigeria's participation at this event.
The first winner in the Trophy Lager promo has emerged. Olanishe Adeleke, a resident of Alimosho local government area, is the first winner of 1 million naira from the first promo draws, and he is ecstatic.
I thought maybe it was a scam. But initially when he asked me a question, did I participate in any of the draw? I said yes. So he asked some other question, do I have anybody that works with the brewery? I said no. And probably I was my wife and my kids. So they feel very happy that Sunday. So I thank God for everything that happened. Because this is a miracle. Yeah. For now, I just have to say the truth. Trophy is the best. And I want the best for them too. I need to advise my friend to start taking off it. Yeah, it's the best drink.
The promo is designed to reward consumers of the premium beer brand across the country with lots of airtime and cash prizes ranging from 5,000 naira to 1 million naira. According to International Breweries PLC, brewers of Trophy Lager, more millionaires are expected to emerge in the weekly draws. Consumers are also encouraged to participate in the promo by checking under their favorite Trophy Lager beer crown cork for a code that will provide an opportunity either to become millionaire or to win airtime and cash prizes. Let's take a look at some business now. Here's Anne Wilder.
Hello and welcome to Business News. The federal government's vision of providing subsidy on fertilizer for small-scale farmers is gradually yielding results, as 5 million small-scale farmers have now been captured under the fertilizer subsidy regime. The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Sambo Nanono, who was speaking at a meeting in Abuja, explains that the intervention will help drive the process for the attainment of food security in Nigeria, especially in the face of a COVID-19 pandemic and flooding which has affected food production.
I wish to inform you that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has registered in the developed database of smallholder farmers for easy targeting with fertilizer subsidy support. So far, about 5 million farmers and their farms have been registered with biometrics, including farm GIS coordinates. As you may be aware, government has put in place several intervention programs geared towards supporting smallholder farmers, most especially those affected by COVID-19 pandemic, flood, NSAS, and the earlier cessation of rainfall.
The central bank has increased its target credit facility from 150 billion naira to 300 billion naira following the success and the positive impact of the program on output growth. The CBN says the expansion of the credit line, which is meant for households and small and medium businesses affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, is to enable them have more access to the facility. In its report on response by the monetary and fiscal authorities of COVID-19, Governor Godwin Emefiele says the TCF funds will already be disbursed through the Israel Microfinance Bank, while already 149.21 billion naira has been disbursed to 316,869 beneficiaries. Meanwhile, Mr. Emefiele says the CBN has also extended over 738 billion naira credit to manufacturers to keep their operations running in the midst of the pandemic. And let's go to the domestic market now, where the market could not sustain the rebound recorded last Friday. Investors wasted no time to take profit on some high-valued stocks. Let's hear more from Ekaite Afia.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Despite a positive market breadth, the stock market's key indicators ended Monday's session negative as investors began the second trading week of December with profit taking. That growl from the bear tells you that it managed to retake the last position, which was held by its rival, the bulls, after renewed sell pressure pulled the market's main index back by 0.21%. Towards the corridor of the 34,000 lower level. Now, the 39 billion naira drop on the market's overall value came primarily on losses in the share price of big banks like Zenith, Access, and GT Bank, as well as consumer and industrial goods, blue chips, Nigerian breweries, and Lafarge Africa. However, traders say that today's downturn is nothing to worry about, as investors are only taking advantage of the previous gains recorded last week, while most of the listed equities still have strong fundamentals for investments. Meanwhile, the volume of shares traded for the day was moderate at 324.32 million units, which were carried out in 4,108 transactions. Now, Monday may have started negative for the NSE, but traders say they are hopeful for a return of the bull in the coming sessions this week. Well, thanks for joining us for the Stock Market Report. I'm Akaite Afia.
That's Business News Tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Onwawadu. It's back to you, Juma.
Thanks a lot, Anne. Voting has ended and vote counting is ongoing in many parts of Ghana following today's presidential and national election in the country, which was considered largely peaceful. Eyes are on the West African country to see if it can keep it standing, where election disputes this year have fanned fears of a slide back into authoritarianism. The two main presidential candidates, current President Nana Akufo-Addo and former President John Dramani Mahama, have promised economic recovery following the coronavirus pandemic. Earlier, I spoke to Joy News correspondent Raymond Akwa on the situation there.
The greater part of the election is over. People queued from as early 7 a.m. this morning, and in some 33,000 polling stations across the country, the over 70 million had the chance to go vote for their candidates, both at the presidential and at the parliamentary level too. What's happening now is counting has started. There are a few, quite negligible instances of ballot disruption, largely out of disagreements over whether or not the actual process was adopted, or secondly, whether some related or unrelated violent incidents seem to have affected the main course of the election. And these are just a handful of incidents barely spread across the country. So that is the situation on the ground. The very people who have led the various political parties into this election have actually basically been quite affirmative in their thoughts about whether or not it's going to be a successful process or not. And they believe so that so far, it looks like it's early days, yet the voting went quite well. It is actually the counting and the subsequent declaration of results that's a bit problematic, and some people may fear might generate some trouble, especially when it doesn't go one way or the other, because of the high stakes involved in the election. This is the first time in the Republic of Ghana that an incumbent is seeking to make sure he doesn't become a one-term president. Since 1992, we've always had governments who are termed in the periods of the 8-year period being changed in the years of 2000 and also 2008.
Still ahead on the news at 10, more stories from our London studio in Around the World in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The U.S. state of Georgia has again certified Joe Biden's win in the American presidential election following 3 counts of ballots. It marks yet another blow for the Trump campaign, which has for weeks claimed a rigged election in the state. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to travel to Brussels this week for a meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in hopes of salvaging a post-Brexit trade deal. The decision was reached after a 90-minute phone call between the two failed to produce a breakthrough. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A doctor in Ethiopia's Tigray regional capital Mekelle has said that at least 27 people have been killed during the fight between federal and regional troops. The testimony contradicts the statement from Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's office that says that there have been no civilian casualties. The Prime Minister has also insisted that the regional forces have been defeated despite denials from the regional leaders. According to Mr. Abiy, the Tigrayan forces do not have the capacity to mount a guerrilla war from the mountains in the northern region. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom is preparing to start giving the first doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine less than a week after the country has become the first Western nation to approve a COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccinations are set to start, and frontline health staff, people over 80 and care home workers will be first to get it. The NHS has reported that 50 hospital hubs across England have already received their allocation of the vaccine. UK health officials expect up to 4 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine by the end of December. The United States plans to sanction Chinese officials over their alleged role in Beijing's disqualification of elected opposition legislators in Hong Kong. As many as 14 people, including officials of China's parliament, will be affected by measures such as asset freezes and financial sanctions. The news comes after Hong Kong's government last month expelled 4 opposition members from its legislature after China's parliament gave city authorities new powers to curb dissent. This is the latest move from the White House as President Donald Trump's administration maintains pressure on Beijing in his final weeks in office. An unidentified illness has hospitalized more than 300 people in southeastern India. Local officials investigating the case said that patients in the city of Elleru have reported a range of symptoms, including seizures, loss of consciousness, and some nausea over the weekend. All the patients have tested negative for COVID-19. Authorities are now testing water samples in Elleru for contamination after all patients have received their water from a common source. Another monolith, similar to those found recently in other parts of the world, has appeared on a beach in Britain. The mirrored structure was discovered on the Isle of Wight off the south coast of England. This is the 4th sighting of a monolith, after the first one was found in Utah last month, and the other 2 shining metal towers that appeared in Romania and Southern California. An anonymous collective called The Most Famous Artist has taken credit for the monoliths in Utah and California. And finally, a fireworks store in southern Russia has caught fire, sending thousands of rockets into the skies. This video, released by the Russian Ministry of Emergencies, shows rockets exploding into the early morning skies. According to local media, several streets had been closed, which caused several hours of traffic jams in Rostov-on-Don. The ministry said in a statement that no injuries were reported and that it took several hours and hundreds of firefighters to bring the blaze under control. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. The chairman of the local organizing committee for the 20th National Sports Festival and Deputy Governor of Edo State, Mr. Philip Shaibu, disagrees with the decision of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 to fix the rescheduled games for January the 3rd to the 18th next year. Mr. Shaibu, who inspected facilities that will be used for the festival, earlier today accused the PTF of being insensitive to the plight of the athletes, as nothing has changed within the December the 3rd to the 17th the games were scheduled to hold. That's it on Sports News. Ijama, back to you.
Thanks, Olumide. And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari's personal assistant on social media today said the president would address a joint session of the National Assembly on Thursday over the current security challenges in the country. That's the news at 10 tonight. Many thanks for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Bunyato. Good night.